Good morning. Good Monday. Welcome. I hope everyone's weekend, everyone's week, everyone's everything was really super fantastic. So let's get everyone here. Trace is in the house. My wife's in the house. RHINO host is in the house. Big GM, Gary's in the house, and amongst others. We're not going to shout out every single person, but when you're the first four, you get the shout out. So welcome, 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 welcome. All right, we got quite a showing today. Woo-wee! Come on in, come on in. So we have some music, always listening to a little bit of music, allow myself to kind of like chill out a little bit. So my wife will tell you, not that anyone speaks to her, but if you do, you know, she's a really nice person. This whole weekend, all I did was I allowed Twitter to give me my notifications, right? So like, we're here, we're there, and then I'm like, my wristwatch will go off, and I go, "Oh, did you know this? Did you know this? Did you know this? Did you know this?" She's like, "Anthony, please stop." And in proper, you know, really trying to trick Anthony. Let me just shut this off. So all weekend we got a lot of good news in terms of Ukraine and Russia. So Ukraine is, you know, so the news outlets are reporting all the travesties and atrocities that are happening, right? This building gets hit, this many death counts, blah, blah, blah. And I don't mean blah, blah, blah to talk about people dying. I mean, blah, blah, blah in terms of after 18 days, we kind of have a bit of an immunity, a bit of a tolerance for the news that's coming out of war, right? Like we're reasonable adults. We know what war means. So we don't need to act surprised every day. Oh my God, did you hear someone died? No, it's bad, right? We pray for them, but it's not something that we are surprised. We know it's happening. It shouldn't, but we know it, right? So on the other end of the news is you have one of the ministers of Ukraine actually post a video on Twitter saying, "Hey, listen, we're working with the Russians. We're listening to them. We feel like they're listening to us. We're not just going to give in, but we feel very optimistic." In fact, the fourth round of negotiations happened this week. In fact, there's a lot of people that came out. When I say a lot of people, I mean really high-ranking Ukrainian ministers and Russian ministers that have since said, we believe that there's going to be a signed ceasefire this week. And I'll tell you something about politics. That stuff doesn't just, it's not a surprise, right? So if I'm negotiating a deal on behalf of Russia or behalf of Ukraine or behalf of anyone, I know where the deal is, right? Like I know this is what they want. This is what I want. This is the middle. This is what I'm willing to concede. This is what I'm hoping they're willing to concede. These are the points I'm going to push them on. But in that negotiation, you know to yourself, well, if push comes to shove, I know that if I just do this, this, and this, it's over. So I know it's in my own power to end this. Now, granted, I have to give up a lot, but I know I can end it, period, end of story. And it's that confidence in my behavioral background that allows me to make the opinion and make the statement that I think this ends very soon. Because I've been in many negotiations in my life, and I would never even think to say something out loud, especially on Twitter, if I did not believe at least the outcome was in my control. That being said, outcomes are their outcomes, right? Like you can't, if it was guaranteed, it would just be the fact, right? So possible outcomes is a different word than factual outcome. So with that being said, who knows what could happen, right? Then you read the news today that there's 13 Chinese fighter jets entering Taiwan airspace. You see Chinese stocks getting annihilated. They're all down 20, 25%. So a lot of bad stuff is happening in China. They just locked down Shenzhen. I think it's the fourth largest port in the world. The population is 17.5 million because of COVID outbreak, 3,300 new cases. So if you remember during COVID, I think China had like 3,000 cases in total. Now, COVID came from China, and I don't know if that's proven factually, so I don't want anyone to get triggered by that. But I believe it came from that region, right? Like, so we can speculate, oh, it really came from Ukraine, from a US laboratory, blah, blah, blah. But it was found in Wuhan, and that's kind of like, that's acceptable. We know it's from that region, right? Now, China has like what, 1.5 billion people to get 3,000 COVID cases? We don't believe their numbers. Now, China is a dictatorship. So when they get a COVID outbreak, they say, oh, you guys think you could like write your politician? Everyone's in their house, locked down for the week. I hope you have enough food. I told you to have enough rice. I hope you do, because if you don't, you're going to die in your house. Because if you leave your house, we're going to shoot you. Right? Everyone understand that? Do I need to set an example? Okay. So they have a very effective way of dealing with COVID. It's not exactly an ethical way. It's not a way that I would ever get behind. But in terms of if we're being fair-minded, reasonable adults, if we're judging the effectiveness of it, it's very effective. So we don't see China's COVID scare being a thing. In fact, we believe it's probably a bigger story. What is the deals that China and Russia have in place with each other? Does a shutdown of China? I don't know the answers, right? Like, but I don't think on the surface it doesn't smell right. China, oh my God, COVID. First of all, China had bird flu and all the rest. They're pretty good at dealing with pandemics. They have a very effective way of dealing with the pandemics. We're on the 4th booster shot for Pfizer. I mean, for me to believe a country, especially as effective as China in terms of dealing with COVID, all of a sudden are going to get ravaged by this COVID, I just don't see it, right? So there's something there. I don't know what it is. The Kremlin and Russia came out this morning saying, hey, listen, the US and EU are baiting us to hit Ukrainian targets. In fact, if they continue to do that, we're going to look at that as a provocation of war. And behind the curtain, what high-ranking minds have been saying is this is election year, this is midterms. President Biden has so grossly, and this isn't an opinion, I guess it is, but it should be fact, right? Everyone should accept this next sentence, has so grossly underperformed any expectation. In fact, to quote Trump over the weekend, if you take the 5 worst presidents in the history of this country and put them together, they would not equal one Joe Biden, right? Like, and I gotta tell you, I mean, if you subtract out norms of the culture, right? Like what was going on in the time period. So like, for instance, when people knock over statues and say, well, that president allowed this thing and it's heinous and it shouldn't be allowed. Well, yeah, we agree. But during that time period, it was acceptable. Yes, we've moved on from it and we've learned it's wrong. But if you put the person back in the time period, right? So if you take out those things, whether it's whatever it is, right? I think that might actually be a true sentence. If you remember when Trump was running for presidency, he's going to start World War III. He's going to do this, inflation, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I got to tell you, everything that they told you Trump was going to do is actually happening with Biden. So again, I'm not making a political statement. I guess I am, but I'm not meaning to. I'm actually trying to make a factual statement. And maybe you'll say, Anthony, well, that's your opinion. I kind of don't think it is, right? Like, I think this is factual stuff. But I say I think because I'm being fair, right? You might not agree with me, and that's fine. Like, we're not here. That's a market, right? Like a stock market. A market is a buyer and a seller. Someone likes it, someone doesn't like it. They come together, and here we are. So the point being, and I said this to my wife this weekend, the thing that the market doesn't like is uncertainty. And you've heard that sentence many times, but you can't calculate uncertainty. There's a guy, Scott Adams, he's the creator of Dilbert, and I've actually followed him for many years. He's one of, if I had to list the people in my life that have framed and evolved the way that I think, Scott Adams is top 5. So he's very, very notable to me. And he has a thing that he calls the law of slow moving objects. And the law states, and I'm not even sure if it's a real law, but the way he describes it, it's a law to me. In my life, law of slow moving objects. And since I'm the one presenting here, I'm going to share that with you. And the law is, and he applies it a lot to global warming. If you know what the scare is, and you have time between now and then, you will naturally figure out a solution. Now, global warming as an example, if we go ahead and say, oh my God, global warming, the ice caps are going to melt and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Well, you're missing a lot of variables, right? Like, what are the things that are going to melt the ice caps? Well, CO2 emissions. Okay. Does nuclear solve CO2 emissions? Yeah, but nuclear, oh my God, that's really scary. Well, do you think technology might evolve between now and 100 years from now that nuclear might not be so scary, that the generations underneath you are going to not be scared by it? Well, yeah, maybe. Well, then therefore, just randomly, that's a solution that could solve that problem, right? Well, there's too much population. Well, what if a pandemic comes and wipes out 10% of the population? Would that solve something in global warming? Yeah, but you can't. The point being, there's so many variables between now and tomorrow, let alone now and 100 years from now. Anthony, global warming is not 100 years, it's 10 years from now. I don't agree with you, but let's say you're right. There's so much between now and 10 years. Do you know 10 years ago, when you played a video game, it was a bunch of pixels on a screen? Now you put goggles on and you're in the video game? Like, so much changes in 10 years. Do you know for polio, they had to spend 10 years coming up with a vaccine? For COVID, they had 3 in less than a year. Technology moves. And the law of slow moving object states that if you know the problem and you know the time needed to solve it, you will naturally find a solution, or one that you can tolerate, one that's acceptable. So that's the way the stock market works. If we know what we're facing, we'll be fine, because money will flow where it needs to flow. The difficulty that we face now with Ukraine and Russia and COVID and the Fed Reserve and off balance sheet items and dark pools of money and dark banking, and we don't know where the problems are, right? What if Russia sends a nuke to Ukraine? Like, what would happen if Ukraine goes ahead and gets what they want, and US puts fighter pilots in the sky and make it a no-fly zone, and Russia's like, you are not going to tell us it's a no-fly zone. They shoot down an American pilot, and then NATO gets involved, and everyone comes at Russia. Then Russia goes to China, Iran, North Korea, and says, we're the East, they're the West, let's go. That's a problem. You can't calculate how bad that would actually be. Every one of those countries has nuclear weapons. Energy will go through the roof. Do you know the breadbasket of the world is Russia and Ukraine? Do you know they account for more than 20% of the wheat collectively? Wheat, potash to grow stuff. There is a coming food shortage that you don't even know about because no one's sharing it with you. That's the way the media works. They get theirs first, then they tell you about it, right? So you should go ahead and start buying stuff. But here's the deal. Everything I just shared with you is really, really scary stuff. In fact, if you knew that, you would go ahead and say, oh my God, let me go buy oil. Oh my God, let me buy gold. Oh my God, let me buy silver. But here's the thing with the stock market. It moves faster than you. People know things before you know it. There is an origin of information, and as it grows, as it migrates from person to person playing the game of telephone, it becomes more and more priced in. So for instance, say 10 people know something about the stock market and they go ahead and invest accordingly. Like, let's take 9/11, for example, right? The terrorists knew they were going to fly the planes. So they took short positions on the stock markets and the airliners because they believed that when the news came out that we just got, 2 planes went through the World Trade Center, that the stock market would crash and especially the airlines would go down. They were right. The point is, those 10 people, well, I don't know if it was 10, but those terrorists, when they went ahead and did that, they then subsequently told somebody else, hey, I can't tell you why, but I would short the markets here. And those people said, hey, you've never been wrong before. Okay, cool, let's do it. Then all of a sudden you start seeing those short positions. It starts actually catching people's attention. Why? Why is there all these short positions on American Airlines? Is there something we don't know? Listen, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not the short air. Somebody knows something. Then those short positions start piling up to the point that when the event happens, everyone piles into it. Oh my God, but that's the top of the day, right? Like, that's the top. In fact, American Airlines, I don't know the price action of it, but I believe that the bottom, the lowest price of American Airlines was probably shortly thereafter. But it was likely going down the whole way through, because as that information gets out, people say, oh my God, like when the airplanes hit the towers, what did everyone say? Oh my God, short the airlines, no one's gonna get on an airline. But everyone before that already knew that and they took their positions. Therefore, when finally the retail people, when the people that didn't know why they were doing it got in, they were the last ones. They weren't the first ones, even though that what they saw in front of their eyes just happened, and they believe they were the first ones. They weren't, because other people knew it beforehand. The market always knows before you, because everyone starts knowing something by one person. And unless you truly believe you're that one person, it's not going to be you. To be that one person, you have to first of all be able to think for yourself. So if you've ever watched the news media and believe it, you're not that person, right? If you've ever taken someone's advice, you're not that person. If you've never felt strong enough to go to your neighbor and say, hey, listen, if I was you, I would do this right now, you're not that person, right? And maybe you are, I don't know. And I'm speaking to a camera that's showing me, so don't anyone take that personally. The point is, as it pertains to Russia and Ukraine, everything I just said sounds awful. But where was the market? Where is the market? Did it price it in? Now, Anthony, well, there's a lot of uncertainty still. How can you price it in? Well, you can't. You could kind of put the bumpers on like a bowling alley, right? Like, I don't know, I want to get a strike, but if it goes over here, I know that I'm safe, right? Like, I got something over here and I got something over here. And then as the news comes out, the bumpers they come in little by little by little, because you have a more predictable path of where that ball is going to go. My point is, when I see this weekend and I see credible ministers, high up individuals talking about the fourth round of negotiations upon them, and that they believe that they're going to have a signed ceasefire, I believe that. I believe that that's enough that other market participants that are still selling things because what happened are missing the point of what's in front of them. I believe when you put that piece of information into your calculus, you can reasonably say, I think the future is better than the past. Now, that doesn't mean the future is going to be rosy, but think about where we just came from. We came from scares of nuclear war every day. Who remembers the actual footage, the real-time footage of the nuclear reactor in Ukraine on fire? That's where we're coming from. Do you think that's going to be the case going forward? I don't. In fact, Russia went to Israel to speak to the prime minister. It's not Benjamin Netanyahu anymore. I don't know the new guy's name, something Bennett, I believe. But anyway, so they went there to seek counsel, to seek guidance. Now, who is Israel to the US? It's our strongest ally, right? Like, Israel and the US are like this. In fact, they are the closest allies that we've ever had, right? Like, they are our buddy. We can say Israel is our best friend, okay? So when Russia goes to Israel to talk and seek guidance, what do you think that guidance is, right? What do you think that prime minister represents, right? It's a way that Russia gets to save face. US is not involved in it, but they have a common partner. Nobody wants to be in war. Nobody. It's like, to believe you should be in war is quite literally an absence of being able to think. Like, many people say, oh, Russia just wants to be in war. And for what purpose? Oh, well, they're Russians. Why? Because you watch a lot of James Bond movies. Nobody wants to be in war, because when you're in war, you're shooting people. People are shooting back at you. There's sanctions. There's uncertainty. Think about what we just said about the market. The market doesn't like uncertainty. Do you think countries like uncertainty? Do you think citizens like uncertainty? Do you think leaders like that their citizens have nothing anymore? It's not okay. Nobody likes war. Therefore, everyone's looking to get out of war, but everyone's looking to save face. Those that got into a war for a particular purpose, that are dictators like Putin, well, they have to get what they want or close to it. People like Zelensky, they can be appeased very easily. Zelensky was a comedian 3 years ago. Zelensky has a $40 million house in Miami, right? Like, anyone that continues talking about this guy, I'm going to lose my mind. He is a quack. He is not a, if I was the leader of a country, I would not be allowing my citizens to get slaughtered left and right while I sit in a cave somewhere talking and crying to the United States and everyone else, please help us, please help us. You know what they're saying? Oh, if the US, they should go ahead and put a no-fly zone over our country. Translation, We want to see a US fighter pilot get shot by Russia so that US goes ahead and bails us out. They fight Russia, and then we just sit here on the US's team. Have you ever played basketball against like the little snot kid around the block that's really, really good? And then your 25-year-old uncle comes by and says, I'm on his team. And you're like, you can kick my butt, but he can kick your butt. So, right? Like when you go ahead and stand behind, you ever see the commercials where it's like, yeah, hold me back, where it's like no one's holding you back, but you're trying to look tough. That's all he does, but he's doing it with people's lives, and that's not okay. And everyone that goes ahead and says, oh, Zelensky hero, not interested. So what does Zelensky want out of this? Well, he can save face. He's not a credible person. He's been there for like 2-3 years. Ukrainian's his second language. Crimea, a lot of you, do you know Kiev in Ukraine is the original Russian capital? That only after the Soviet Union was broken that it got taken away. Moscow was their second capital. Their actual capital is in Ukraine. Ukraine is Russia, except it's not, right? Like they broke apart. They have their own culture. They're their own country. I'm not saying that they belong to Russia. I'm saying if you look at the history of, there's people that live in Ukraine that are still alive from when they were Russian. So is there a certain passion? Does Mother Russia look at Ukraine as their children? Are there some people in Ukraine that look at Mother Russia and say, you left us, I wish I was still there? Probably, I don't know, I'm not there, but I imagine so. So I imagine when Putin is talking to his country from a motherly perspective, there are people, there's Nazis that live in there, they're taking advantage of our people, they're racism, they're taking advantage of our people, which is what he's saying. I know most people don't get that information, but I do. He's talking about this as genocide, that there's racism, that there's discrimination going on in Ukraine against his people, and he's protecting them. He goes ahead and says, Russia's mostly Jewish. That's where Karl Marx is from years ago, and Marxist is a derogatory term for people that are talking about global cabals and stuff, but Karl Marx was Russian. There's a lot of a Jewish population that's Russian, right? Like that's their religion. And there is credible information that a lot of the Nazis moved to Ukraine after Germany collapsed, right? So what Putin is saying is there's a lot of his people that are being really hurt right now, and he wants to protect them. Now, maybe that's Anthony, you really drank the Kool-Aid, you are Putin apologist. No, I'm not. But I believe that there's two sides to every story, because if you're trying to tell me that Putin just woke up one morning and said, I want to get into a World War III and have a bunch of people die and have everyone hate me because I just am in a good mood, I'm in a good mood or bad mood to stay, I don't believe that. Like, people don't do that. So he does have a story. He does have a reason. Whether you agree with his reason or not is you. But for him to actually have one, it will behoove you to be educated on what it is, right? So when he's taking a stance, and remember, let's use our behavioral science caps here. When he's taking a stance that's moral, that's ethical, he can't back down from it. He can't say, well, we wanted to save our people due to ethnic cleansing, but hey, these sanctions, peace, guys, sorry. You can't do that. So what is the solution? Do you think it's a coincidence that he went to Israel, which is the largest per capita Jewish population in the world? Do you think it's a coincidence that Israel is best friends with the US? In fact, Israel then spoke to Zelensky of Ukraine and said, hey, we think you should surrender. Like, what are you doing? You need to stop. So Zelensky, like the Momo that he is, then comes out publicly and says, yeah, Bennett or whatever the prime minister's name is told me to do this, but we're Ukrainians. We don't ever surrender, blah, 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 blah. Buddy, first of all, you're not Ukrainian, right? Like, that's your second language. Secondly, you're not fighting. You're sitting in a cave, probably eating caviar while your people are dying. I don't appreciate that person. I am someone that I will stand with my people no matter what. And if you take a bullet, I'll take a bullet. That's the way it goes. I do not sit there in a cave somewhere and let you get killed. That's not the way it works. I don't find that person to be credible. Well, Anthony, Putin's not on the front lines either. Yeah, well, Putin's actually offering a ceasefire. Yeah, well, he's saying he wants his terms. Well, what are his terms and why is he saying that? Is he saying, I want these sections of Ukraine because these are Russian people that are getting ethnically cleansed and I won't stand for it? He is, right? So we can't back down from that. So how does Zelensky do anything? Well, if you're a non-credible actor, which I clearly believe he's not, money solves everything, right? So over the weekend, you also saw Ukraine come out and say that they have differences with NATO. It was either Ukraine or NATO, but the sentence, this is factual, right? There was an acknowledgement that they're not going to be in NATO anytime soon. One of the two things Putin said was you can never be in NATO because he does not want the US and the Western societies on his border. Can you imagine that? A president that took care of his border, right? Go figure. But he doesn't want that on his border. Ukraine has conceded that while saving face. I think that Ukraine or NATO, one of them said it because I read all of it, but it was an agreement or it was an understanding, it was an acknowledgement. We're not going to be in there. Okay, cool. So Ukraine got to save face. They didn't come out and say, yeah, we're not going to be in it for you. They said, we just don't agree with that. Okay. Now, what about those parts left? Kind of seems that's the left of the negotiation. Well, in Crimea, there's a big natural gas reserve that Ukraine has not been giving water to because Russia had annexed them and they do not want Russia to go ahead and take that. Okay. Well, Russia wants Crimea. Okay. Ukraine wants Crimea, but for the resources, not for the people. Okay, it seems like there's a deal here. Well, but Russia wants the natural resources too. Come on, Russia. You can't have everything. Let's have a deal. Okay. You see what I'm saying? There is paths to deals. Russia has said that they're not going to be able to pay any of their foreign debt in anything other than rubles until the sanctions come off. They said they're going to hold, I think there's a double of, what's the currency in China? Not yen, that's, anyway, a double of the Chinese currencies in their vaults. China's obviously backing them and saying, hey, listen, we got you. But China's different. The Chinese culture is one of patience. Okay, let's let them make the mistake. And these guys will wait for 15 years. They are so disciplined. Chinese culture, did you ever see martial arts? It's so slow. Russia is very different. They're very impulsive. We want this and we want it now. So culturally, they don't work, but geographically, they do. Now, China is, I believe, a $25 trillion economy. Russia is a $1.5 trillion economy. It would behoove Russia to stop making so much noise. It's like Casino. Did you ever see that with Robert De Niro, where the bosses are like, hey, get this guy off TV. Can he stop making so much noise? We're getting a lot of attention here. That's what China's saying. Now Chinese stock market's crashing. There is a deal in our belief coming very soon. And if that deal were to come, what would happen to the stock market, right? Now, I may be wrong, because I don't know. Nobody called me and asked me about a deal. But the fact that I can make the argument that there's much more percentage that a deal is coming in front of us, and even if it's just time, right? Do you believe this war is going to last infinite? No. So therefore, you believe a deal's coming in the future? Yes. Has there been a deal in the past? No. Is there going to be a deal in the future? Yes. Therefore, you agree that the future is brighter than the past. Now, of course, that was a little silly game that I just played because we didn't agree how far the deal is in the future and what happens between now and then. That's the uncertainty. But we could all, as reasonable adults, say there will be a deal. Therefore, the future is brighter than the past. But does it get rocky before it gets there? That's what this commentary is right now. It is our belief that it's going to be a little bit smoother over the next week. Also, with the stock market, you have $3.3 trillion worth of options expiring this week. For those that don't know how much that is, that's the most since 2019, which means the volatility of this week is at a 3-year high in terms of $3.3 trillion worth of options expire this Friday, which means that's a lot of stock that's going to change hands. That's a lot of things that are going to expire worthless. That's a lot of hedging that needs to be done. That's a lot, right? The max pain point, which is Wall Street lingo for where most options expire worthless, which means that there's less things changing hands, which conspiracy theorists tend to believe market makers will do because people that are higher than them, like the banks, are like, hey, listen, we don't really want to pay all this, so make sure it lands right there, is S&P 430, I believe. Yeah. So the market is pricing in 3.2% volatility or 3.2% movement this week, which means that movement could be up or that movement could be down, right? 3.2% that's going to move, though, is what's priced in as of now. So the smartest people in the world that take all this calculus and all this math to say 3.2% the market's going to move this week. So the question then becomes, do you believe that's going to move up or do you believe that's going to move down? So you must ask yourself, well, where are we? Where have we come from? We were here, we are now here. At the very least, don't you think there's a higher likelihood we go up than down, considering we just went all this way down? I would think so. Do you think there's a higher likelihood we go up than down because of everything we just described to you paints a much rosier picture going forward than where we came from? I think so. Would you say there's a better chance we go up than down because there's such a short interest in the market, there's such pessimism boiling up that if anything good comes out, this market will fly higher? I think so. Do you think there's a better chance we go up than down? We have a Federal Reserve meeting Wednesday after they're going to talk about, oh, we need to raise rates for inflation, but you just had a whole 2 months of stock market and wealth get crushed. Yeah, oil went up to 130. It's now down to 105. Yeah, gold went up, it went down. Yeah, silver went up, it went down. You could make the argument that the Biden administration has been making that inflation is not their fault. It's the fault of Russians and Ukrainians, which if you just have a chart, you could dispel it. We've entered a time of dystopia where people lie to your face all the time, and you know they're lying, you just don't know what to do about it. Like Biden actually is lying. Oh, it's because of them. Bro, now I sound like I'm talking to like someone down the block. Oil doubled before that ever happened, right? But you're not supposed to know that. Because I really think the Biden voter, the ones that aren't dead, right? Like the ones that sent in mail-in ballots from the grave, the ones that are alive, I think they're just brainwashed. Now, that doesn't mean all of them. I'm sure there's some people that said, hey, listen, I believe Biden's going to be a disaster, but I just morally am opposed to Trump. And I'm not judging anyone, right? I just believe that the voting base of Biden is either dead, brainwashed, or morally opposed to Trump. I believe that's 90% of them. Anyway, so I believe that the market has a much higher likelihood of going up this week than down, and viciously so. Like, I think it really goes up a lot. So that's the commentary I'm going to offer on the market. With that being said, where's our position, right? So we're in McDonald's. We've purchased it all the ways down. I think the lowest we bought it at was we were able to cost down our options when the stock got down to 218. Our account was down 70%, I think. It was really ugly. In fact, it was so ugly that when I wrote the email that morning, I just wrote it's ugly. Friday at the close, the account was down only 10%. We still have 34 days for it to work out. I really actually want to sell all my McDonald's today. This morning, McDonald's was $2.29 in the pre-market. I was like happy as apple pie. I then checked it, it was $2.28. I was a little bit less happy. I was happy as cherry pie. I get in, well, I'm in early, right? But like the market opens and it opens at 225 down to 223. And I'm like, I can't catch a break. But so the last I saw it, it was like 225. But I do believe, so this is my belief, right? So the market futures were up 400 this morning. When the market opened, it was up 220. Last I checked, the market was up 55. Now let's actually, before we go ahead and talk about stock market levels, let's talk about one more thing. What we've always said this entire time is that to understand the stock market, you have to understand the macro. The macro is where's the circus, right? Where's the money flow? Because when the circus comes to town, you can trip, fall in a pile of manure, and someone's going to say, hey, kid, I'll give you 10 an hour, go scoop it up. You cannot help but to make money because there's so much money everywhere. So when you take a look at China, right? China's crashing. I think all their stocks are down. Like the index itself was down 12%, I think, which is really, really a lot. I don't trade Forex. Sorry. But if I was a Forex trader, I would be shorting the euro from here to Kingdom Come because I believe it goes to 88. And I said that since it was 150, you guys met me at 120, and I've held that belief because I believe the euro is highly flawed. They have a consolidation of monetary policy, but not a consolidation of debt, which means this country can have this debt, this country can have this debt. Those two countries can necessitate completely different rates, but the rates have to go ahead and cover everybody. Therefore, it allows some countries like Italy and Spain to say, yeah, I'll just run up the debt. And countries like Germany to say, can you guys stop? Like, why do I have to pay for your nonsense? So we've always believed that the euro was a highly flawed currency, but I don't trade Forex. I just know a couple things about a couple things, right? So when the circus is in town, so you could look at China and say, Anthony, but oh my God, did you see China? It's crashing. Therefore, the US is definitely going to crash. Well, do you see how many flaws are in that sentence? Now, because the way the media, and I don't want to always blame things on the media, I don't think they do it purposely. I think they just are speaking to their audience. And unfortunately, the audience is very uneducated, right? So if I said to you, oh my God, the stock market, money goes places and everyone's leaving China and they're taking their money away from it, you would naturally, if I worded it that way, you would naturally say, well, that stinks, but where are they going? Right? Like, I want to go where they're going. That's be the way you would word it. That would make sense. But instead, what if I said, China's crashing, investors are scared, stock markets, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. Well, now you're like, oh my effing God, I better pull my money from everywhere. Do you understand I said the same exact thing, but two different ways to get a response that are diametrically opposed? Because the reality is, when stocks go down, they're being sold. Money's coming out of it. That money, where does it go? You have inflation at 7-8%. Do you think that money sits in cash? Not a chance. It goes somewhere else. If you had billions, if not trillions of dollars in any market, and you saw the second largest market in the world crashing, what would you say? All right, I need to get my money out of there and put it somewhere safe. The US market, they're guaranteed. It's the biggest, most liquid global market. It's in the US currency. I'll put it there. Now, if you were going to do that, which index would you put it in? I put it in the Dow Jones. That's the trophy assets of the country, the 30 largest, most important companies in this country. Companies that are larger in aggregate than the country itself. Well, that's not true. But it is true if you factor in net worth, right? Because the net worth of this country is negative. The net worth of those companies is wildly positive because they don't have the debt that the country has. A little unfair because they also don't have a military. But if you take the military out, I'd rather live in Apple than United States, right? So when I see something like happening in China, when I see something uncertainty happening in Russia, but I see Russia getting closer to making a deal, and I see these things, and I see that the euro is, by all accounts, just broke not a 50-year trend, because it hasn't been around for 50 years, but it's broken a complete trend line from when it started. I believe it's 1990 or somewhere over there. So let's say 30 years. I would say, I need to get my money out of the euro. I need to get my money out of China. I don't know what the hell's going on in Russia. Where do I put my money? The US is just safe. They're thinking about raising rates. They're going to defend the currency. The value of the currency is going to go up. Therefore, if I can own a company that's in that currency, I get the double whammy of the country doing good, GDP doing good, and the currency going up. I don't care. Just put my money in the Dow. Whoa, McDonald's. Yeah, McDonald's. It's McDonald's. Cool. All right. So that's kind of our belief, right? So it's a very casual way of saying exactly what we did, but it's a way that if we were sitting having a beer, you would understand, right? So it is our belief that the market is going to be up this week. Now, this is what makes this program fun. I have no idea where it is right now. The last I checked, everything was negative except for the Dow, which was 55 points, and it was going negative. So we're going to look at it. We're going to do a bit of a share screen. If I'm lucky, right? I'd rather be lucky than right. But if things are going to work out, McDonald's is up, everything's up, or everything's down. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong. But the point is, in sharing my complete thesis with you, we can then identify where was wrong. Do you remember being in school and your math teacher would say, solve the question and solve the math problem, and you would do 2 times 2 times 3 equals 12. and the teacher would say, well, how'd you get that answer? Show your work. It wasn't to show your work because they thought you were cheating, which it prevented you from cheating. But it was that if you were wrong, they could go through your math and say, no, this is where you were wrong. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, right? That's where it was. If you went ahead and did 36, well, maybe you took 2 times 4. If you thought the answer was 64, right? Maybe you took 2 times 4, bracketed it off, and then put the other 2 as an exponent to 8, and you did 8 squared equals 64. That's not the correct answer, right? You shouldn't have put the parentheses around it. Now, for those that understand math, you got that. For those that don't, just know that I was a good student, right? All right, so let's see where we're at. And before we do this, please God, like, we own options. It'd be really nice if they were up. Okay. This must be fun for everyone because like we're all gonna see in real time if I'm gonna like throw my computer out a window. All right. All right. Let's refresh this. Hey, we're up 300 points. You know, sometimes it just feels good to be right. Oh, McDonald's is up, thank God. Look at where McDonald's was. It's 223. Got to 228.44. Citigroup, we wanted to own. It was a 20 red, not a red. Now it's not 20 anymore. So we believe the market's gonna go up. Now I gotta tell you, I want to get out of McDonald's so bad because I'm just having heart palpitations, right? Like you should never have $50,000 in options. Put it that way. So we're going to price it and play with it. But let's take a look at what we believe the market's going to. So this is the new and improved super duper list. All right. So let's stop looking at this because I'm going to have like heart palpitations again. So let's look at, we want to look at the spiders or the QQQs. Let's look at the QQQs. Okay. Because they're more retail and, oh, by the way, anybody that saw me live Wednesday where I was like having like breathing attacks, I've since solved that. I feel great. I feel like Anthony again. It was an anxiety thing. Like I have a lot on my plate and I just had to kind of manage it. And my wonderful wife is wonderful and I'm not telling you the rest, right? Okay, anyway. So let's take a look at the QQQ. Let's go ahead and put in some volatility. That's not volatility, that's Verizon, which by the way is quickly becoming something I'm going to throw out a window as well. Because for the life of me, I do not understand why when it rains, I don't have Wi-Fi. Does the rain interrupt the Wi-Fi or is it just Verizon being, all right, not getting started. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. All right. How long has it been since we actually did the work, right? Remember the arrows? By the way, the arrows I think are 100%. Let's just get rid of that arrow quick. So what we have here is our previous lines. And as you can see, let's just draw them out a little further. Okay. So this is the line that we had, right? So erase what I just did. And when it broke out on top, it went higher. When it broke at the bottom, it went lower, right? That's pretty clear. But what has happened since? It's actually held this line. Like it broke under it a couple times, went over it. So this looks like a bit of a support line. And this looks like a bit of a resistance line. See, it bumped its head, it's bumped its head. We believe, since we believe it's going up, that the NASDAQ will get to 336, which is 11 points from here, and retest this again. And we believe it's going to break out from it. Now, that's just our opinion, right? So let's see where we're at. So right here, we could see that we're kind of sideways, right? For this portion right here, it's just nothing, TTT, okay. So we can see the volumes kind of sideways as well, right? There's nothing too good going on over here. Okay. And we can see that volatility is kind of, I want to say sideways. I'm not trying to be silly here. Like it's down, it's up, but this point is the same as this point. So it's sideways, okay. Now, this is a new indicator that we've put in. It's a stochastic indicator. It's a mathematical term. It measures the rate of change of the rate of change on a 21-day trending basis. It's like, for instance, when it goes under this, it's oversold. When it goes above this, it's overbought, right? So see this? It's above it. What happens? Down, right? Down. See this? It's at the line. What happens? Down, right? Down. Okay. See, it's under the line. What happens? Up, look, up. See this? It's at the line. What do you think is going to happen next, right? So we believe that this is going to go up, which means we believe this is going to go down, which means we believe the volume's going to go up. So we would be taking new positions, which we're in McDonald's. That's only up 57 cents. I did that for you. And I wanted to sell this again to Citigroup so bad this morning, but it just didn't work out that way. And that's fine. That's okay. This is Anthony Usmud. Okay. Okay, so that's the QQQ. So that's an S. Let's see where we are in the S&P, which is the more important index, because this is where the portfolio managers measure their everything by. All right. So this is volatility. Let's see, where are we? I feel like a little naked. Why don't we draw some lines here too, right? Okay. Okay. So as you can see, this is our support line. We broke under it, but ended above it. Look what happens when we got that much under it. Whoop! Look what happens. We got under it and then popped right back over it. Look where we are now, right? Okay. So we believe we're going to bounce here and come up here. 434. Now this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's this line? Guys, you can't make this up. I'm telling you, the market works a certain way. All of this is calculated well before. What did we say was the point of max pain? 430. Did you see me make the lines just now? There's nothing up my sleeves. This is what it is. So we believe it's going to come from here and go there, which means you have 8.7 points on the S&P, which equals about 700 Dow points, give or take. So we believe up is the direction. Now let's take a look at the VIX. Yeah, it was really high here, but it looks like it's coming down. This looks like it's bent lower. When the market sold off, it was on higher volume. When the market went, so it sold off here on lower volume, then sold off on higher volume. So it's kind of all over the place, but I see this line. Let's see what happens the last time at this line. Boop! What happened the last time at this line? Boop! What happens when it was above the line? Boop! Oh, so we have a top indicator as well. Super cool, right? Okay. So we believe market up. So when we take a look at our super duper list, so look at this. It's like underneath coming up, right? So I feel really good. When was the last time it was underneath? Underneath here. Okay, where was the stock? Oh, man. So this was a big move up underneath here. Well, that doesn't look like much of a move up. That was not a little move up. But the point remains, it should be a bit of a coiled spring, right? Hopefully. So we're just going to hold our McDonald's. Nice, right? I really wish I was looking at it at 228.44, but we were talking. And that's okay. I really want to get out of it. So if I could, I will. Okay. So let's take a look at our super duper list, then we're going to go. So they're not in order yet. So Citigroup was a 20 red and green. It's not yet. Russia, I don't think they're trading anymore. Now silver. So I'm going to move this down here because we have an opposite of a super duper list. We have a not duper list. Actually, we really should make that. This is for the not duper list too. Disney was attending, not anymore. Nike, All right, it's a 15 red and green, so that's moved up to the top because it's the only one red and green. This is a not duper list. I'll explain to you in a moment what that means. 15 red and green, 15 red and green, 11 red and green, not duper list. Not duper list. Come on, man. How many not dupers do we have? 11 red and green, not duper list. Not duper list. All right. 10 red, no green. 10 red, no green. 15 red and green. Yay. All right. So we have a new list. Oh, by the way, we made a new rule. I'm not buying anything unless it's a 20 red and green for now on. Because 20 red and 16 red and green. It just works every time. Do you know our portfolio tripled from 22 red and green? Tripled. Yeah. Not duper list. Okay. So what I mean by not duper list, you see how the numbers are on top now? This is measuring something that's overbought. And the way the not duper list works, it's the same as the super duper list, right? So 10 red and green, 15 red and green. This is 12 crossover. So that's the phraseology, the terminology for the not duper list. Oh, it's a 12 crossover, right? So silver is the most prominent one. It was a 23 and a crossover. And what happened subsequently since, right? So could we have seen that? I think so. One of our members, he has his own list with me because I like him that much. And I was able to point this out to him Friday. So it's some things like that work, right? So we're still testing it out. So what do we see here? This is a 12 and about to cross over. There's a 13 and did cross over. Look, and here it is, right? So let's put that at the bottom. This is an 11, didn't cross over yet. This is an 11. It's not that high. We want it to be at the top, so let's get rid of that. Lily is a 13 and it's about to cross over. That's a good one. UHS is a 13 and it's crossing over. That's a good one. So 11, it's not at the top yet, but it's still going. So what we will say is Eli Lilly and UHS and Chevron are our biggest short positions, or we believe that you would want to, if you believe the market's going to go lower or whatnot, maybe those are the ones you want to sell. And if you want to buy something, these are the ones you'd like to buy, right? So we'll go ahead and post this in our group. I see I have a chat question. Oh, so it is Don. Don, I actually, so if I had to give a reason why silver is tanking, I would say precious metals are dependent on instability. Precious metals are always a hedge against government and financial system. If one believed a ceasefire was upon us or coming forward, they would then say that the financial system will be able to take a rest rather than being pushed to the brink. In a situation where you restore government stability and financial stability, you no longer need precious metals. So I would say that's the reason. So I would say everything that we said in the beginning of why we believe there's going to be a ceasefire, I think silver's predicting that right now, which we're happy about. I believe silver is something you want to own going forward. If you're trading it, I'd probably sell it here. But I will tell you firsthand, I would love to buy $10,000, $20,000 worth of silver quarters and leave it in my house because I do believe things are going to get a lot worse. But in the near term, I think there's enough pessimism. But also, let's take a look at silver. This means for 23 straight days that silver closed higher than it did previous 4 bars ago. Remember what we said, when everyone buys, who's left to buy? Look at this bar, look how high. Now put it into perspective. This is normal, right? This is normal silver purchases. It's very low. Then you get over here and look how many new people bought. You would say 2 or 3 times the amount of people bought. So I would say it's strictly, it was overdone. would be my opinion. Oh, McDonald's is coming back. All right. How do I join the group? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we put it in our emails. Let's see, is this it? No. Oh, it's right here. All right, let's get to the group. For those that are not in the Facebook group, please there. I've held silver January 23 options since last August. It's been a hard hold. My pleasure, Ken. Hey, Nikki, I gotta tell you guys, I love everyone, but I love Nikki. So, FYI. 228.20. Okay, I gotta go. I have an 11 o'clock call, I have a 12 o'clock call, I have a 1 o'clock call, I have a 2 o'clock call, I have a 3 o'clock call, I have a 3:30 call, I have a 4 o'clock call, and I have a 5 o'clock call. Things are happening, but I sincerely love everyone. If we make moves, we're obviously gonna post them. I wish I could tell you that I have the courage to stay in McDonald's. I kind of want to sell it, especially because I believe I'm up right now. Because in the market, there's a thing as mental fatigue. We watched a $50,000 account go down to 17,000. People said to me, Anthony, you're crazy. No, I have a stomach. I know what we're doing, right? I've seen this before, but it did not feel good. And I want to just free my mind. So if I'm up, I'm going to sell it, which is not an economic term, right? Like that's emotional, Anthony, but it's okay to be emotional if you're honest with yourself. And I want to be emotional on this one. All right. Love everyone. Oh, Nikki, my pleasure. All right, guys, love you. And you will receive the updated emails as they come. But we are very excited to buy our next position. And we believe this week's going to be a good week. So have fun. Bye.